Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 here on Broadcasting Scotland. I'm Kenny McBride. And joining me this evening is Sam Payton from Save Loch Lomond campaign. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm not bad at all. And our first story tonight, the Scottish Parliament today reasserted the right of Scotland to choose its own future in light of the imminent departure from the European Union against the clear democratic wishes of the people of Scotland and the material change in circumstances which that represents. By a margin of 64 to 54, MSPs from the SNP and the Scottish Greens backed a Scottish Government motion which asked that this Parliament recognise the sovereign right of the Scottish people to determine the form of government best suited to their needs. Speaking in advance of the vote, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said, "Today the Scottish Parliament has the opportunity to endorse a fundamental democratic principle, that this country has the right to choose its own future. This week, Scotland will be pulled out of Europe against its will and without its consent, an event which marks a significant and material change in circumstances since 2014. Throughout the Brexit process, the views of the Scottish Parliament and the people of Scotland have been consistently ignored. This government has a clear mandate to exercise the right of this country to take its future into its own hands. That mandate comes directly from the freely exercised will of the people and simply cannot be ignored or denied indefinitely. There are now fundamental issues of democracy at stake. Quite simply, Scotland must have the right to choose its own future." Michael Russell MSP, the Scottish Government's Constitutional Affairs Secretary, closed the debate for the government and later remarked, "Today we have seen a clear endorsement of the mandate the people have given us, to put the question of Scotland's future back to them in a new public vote. A referendum should now be held so that the people can decide if Scotland should be an independent country. We propose that referendum, on a date and in a manner determined by the Scottish Parliament, should take place this year." And Sam, this is something that the independence movement, the Scottish Government, the SNP has been building to really since the day of the Brexit vote. And finally today, again, the Parliament reasserted, this is not the first time they voted to make this point, this reasserted the argument that Scotland still has a decision to make.
Yeah, and it's great. It's really positive. It's a move in the right direction. At the end of the day, the original referendum that Scotland had, that the Tories and everybody liked to take us back to, was based on if we wanted to stay in Europe, we voted no. If we voted yes, chance we would leave our place in Europe. And I know a lot of people that voted on that argument. So whether people are voting for independence or to be a member of the European Union, it has to be readdressed. And the Scottish Parliament, and Nicola Sturgeon, it's quite good to see, is standing up now saying we have that right. Obviously, I want people to vote for independence, but more and more what you're seeing now, what I'm seeing on the street, people that I'm talking to, everyday people, is more and more people who before wouldn't have contemplated an independent Scotland, because of what's happened with Brexit and the way the country's moved and the way they're seeing the contempt Scots have been treated, and not just Scotland but Ireland and Wales as well. More and more people are wanting that choice, to be able to go back to a referendum, a vote, and say, give us that choice. We have got that democratic choice, and that's what it's about. It's about having that democratic choice. So yeah, I think it's really good and really positive. Be interesting to see what Westminster try and say now, but personally, I don't really think they have a say. At the end of the day,
yeah, I mean
the unions.
The argument that I think the SNP has increasingly been making, and that we in the independence movement have made for a long time, is that it's not up to Westminster.
No, it's not.
It is for the people of Scotland to decide. And as you said, so many of the things that we were promised as what we would get if we voted no, our place in Europe would be secure, and we'd get all these new powers and whatnot. And yet, even the Sewell Convention will be made permanent. Of course, none of those things have come to pass. The exact opposite of what we were promised has come to pass. And it's now getting to the point where I think you may be right. I think there is now a number of people looking at what's happened at Westminster and saying, actually, everything that the Yes side said in 2014 was kind of true.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to see that. It's quite encouraging to see that, and especially the older generation, because I think they were the ones that were more kind of my experience, some of the older generation were a bit more scared about going for independence. The younger generation were very much a case of all kind of, yes, we want this, this is our future. Now you're seeing the younger generation have still got that fight in their belly. They certainly, they're looking for that opportunity. And especially what's happened with the younger generation is they're seeing their European rights taken away. They're not going to have the same freedom and movement that we have had the joy of experiencing. And some of them will never experience that. You know, when we say, oh, we jumped in the plane and we went here and where, is that going to still happen? Is it not going to happen? Are they going to be able to work abroad? Are they going to be able to study abroad? Are they going to have that freedom of movement? So, or are they going to have X amount of paperwork and, you know, applications and things that they've got to go through, jump through hoops and things? So, yeah, I think it's looking very positive. And I'm looking forward to them naming the date effectively.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. The First Minister is due to make a statement on Friday now.
Yes.
We had kind of expected that to happen today, but it's been pushed back to Friday. And whatever she's got to say then, I think will give us a much clearer idea of what's going to happen next. This does all tie into another story also at Holyrood today, where MSPs voted to overrule the decision of the Parliament's corporate body to no longer fly the European flag at Holyrood following the UK's departure from the EU. This provoked howls of outrage from the Unionist parties, who objected to Parliament interfering with what had been a clearly partisan vote of the supposedly impartial corporate body. Green MSP Ross Greer made an impassioned defence of retaining the flag though, noting the importance of symbols in demonstrating Scotland's commitment to Europe and to new Scots from the rest of the EU. Greer saved his greatest ire for the Liberal Democrats, saying, "The only real losers here are the Liberal Democrats, the Party of Europe, who are set to vote with the Conservatives to bring the flag down." And I mean, this is one of these things. It's kind of unfortunate that we are literally talking about flags when this is one of the things that we've had thrown at us for a long time, and we've people in the independence movement have always resisted. But I think what Ross Greer said is really important. I think the fact that we're now going to still have the European flag flying at Holyrood does send an important message about how Scotland sees itself.
And I think it is, even though it's a symbolism. It's a symbolism of our democracy, what we believe in, and the fact that we do want to be part of Europe. We want to be part of that bigger, wider community. And Ross Greer is quite right what he says about the Liberal Democrats. They're the ones that are always been fighting to be part of Europe and things like that. But now they're voting, yes, some people might say it's only a flag, but it's a symbolism. It's very, very important. It's very, very important to people. And I think it's great that they are going to keep the flag up. I was reading somewhere, I think it was West Renfrewshire Council, are not taking their European flag down. I might be wrong, it might be East Renfrewshire, so it's one or the other. But they will not be taking the flag down until the council meets in a full council meeting. So the flag will fly until that point. Yeah, it's quite positive. It's quite good. It's shown how Scotland feels that we are being dragged out of Europe against our will. That's not how Scotland voted. But yeah, I think it's quite good that the flag's still going to be flying, and hopefully it'll keep on flying. It won't come down at all.
Yeah, and I mean, this issue of the Lib Dems, I mean, we've talked about it on the show a number of times, but what is it that's, I mean, is it just kind of arch unionism that's stopping the Lib Dems from taking a more democratic approach to all of this? They desperately wanted a second referendum on EU membership, but were unwilling to cooperate with the SNP to get it. They've consistently said that the only party they're willing to work with is the Tories, who are the most anti-European party in Parliament. So what is wrong with them?
I don't know. One of my friends is actually a Lib Dem. He actually stood for in Western Bartonshire Council. Lovely fella, really, really nice guy. Why he stood for Lib Dems, I really don't know. However, I don't understand it, because they're always going about democracy, they're always going about these lovely buzzwords. But however, when it comes to the crunch, there is no democracy there. And we're seeing that more and more. Say they're standing with the Tories rather than stand with SNP or even the Greens. They're very much, it's that, unionist ties, the kind of, it's putting it into words, it's like they're so caught up in this unionism that the democracy
kind of
falls away.
falls to
You
the
know,
side,
it falls away, and it's like, you know, yous are meant to be this democratic party, and yous are not. You cannot offer and fight to have a people's vote for a second referendum on Europe, but then refuse the Scots.
Yeah.
The exact same thing.
Yeah, as the First Minister actually made a point during the debate that one of the Lib Dems candidates at the Westminster election was pro-independence, and so even the Lib Dems couldn't claim that their votes were all votes for the Union, and that's happening more and more in the Labour Party as well.
Yeah, it is. You're seeing more and more Labour members becoming more and more pro-independence. As especially at the moment, again, it's this Brexit. Brexit's done the independence movement wonders.
Yeah.
It really, really has, and it's shown blatantly how much contempt Westminster has for the devolved parliaments, whether it's Scotland, Ireland, or Wales. It shows how much contempt that, you know, they are our masters, and we shall bow. You know, that's pretty much what it feels a bit like. You know, you can make a joke and a laugh about it. But yeah, it's very serious, and yeah, with the Brexit coming up, it has really done. It's woken a lot of people up. It's shown what politics and democracy in this union of countries is really like, which is literally non-existent.
Well, speaking of collaboration with the Scottish Lib Dems, in Brussels today, SNP MEPs Aileen MacLeod, Christian Allard and Heather Anderson, as well as Scottish Lib Dem MEP Sheila Ritchie, today met for the establishment of the European Friends of Scotland, a cross-party, cross-country friendship group that will strengthen and maintain Scotland's relationship with our European friends and neighbours. Originally conceived by the former MEP Alan Smith, who now of course is the MP for Stirling, the group launched today in a packed meeting at the European Parliament and was attended by Scotland's Europe Minister Ben Macpherson. Representatives from EU member states, including Germany, Poland and Sweden, gathered to reaffirm their commitment to a good working relationship between the European Parliament and Scotland. Scotland, of course, voted to remain in the EU, but on Friday will be taken out of the EU against its will by the UK government. In a joint statement, the SNP MEPs said, "This is a sad week for Scotland, but it's also a time of hope. Our EU friends and colleagues have not turned their backs on us. They want us to stay, they want to maintain close links and contacts with Scotland, and they have seen the world of difference between the approach of the Scottish Government and that of the UK Government. We have had such a fantastic, warm welcome by everyone here with lots of support for Scotland going forwards." And this is something that Alan Smith really led the charge with, that impassioned speech that I think we all remember about asking the EU to leave a light on for us to find our way home. What do you make of this announcement today?
Well, I just found out about it when I came into the studio. It's great. It's nice to see that, there's this wee kind of Friends of Scotland. Again, if it's a symbolic thing or what, it's quite nice to have, and just have that wee kind of warm glow about it, that we're still welcome and we're maybe still there in Europe. I think it's quite nice.
Yeah,
it's quite a positive thing.
Yeah, we spoke to members of IFA, the European Free Alliance, which is the kind of party coalition that the SNP is a part of in the European Parliament. And they said that very clearly that even after Scotland leaves, they are considering Scotland as a kind of just an exiled member, and they intend to continue representing Scottish interests in the European Parliament. I think something like this surely has to add to that. The difference that we're hearing from Europe, from various European politicians since the Brexit vote about Scottish independence has been really quite remarkable, hasn't it?
It has. It's been very positive, showing a lot of support towards Scottish independence, and again, that gives us more. It gives it more weight behind our argument and it gives us more strength to have that there, to basically pressurise Westminster into allowing us to have that referendum to go for independence. And it's good to see that we're getting that support from the international community, never mind the European community. But yeah, Alan Smith's wee Leave the Light On, I don't know if you know, but there's lots of wee events happening around Scotland on Friday.
Yeah.
The Leave the Light On events.
Well,
yes.
one that we are actually going to be at on Friday, I'm sure some of our viewers will know Ellen Hofer, great friend of the show and creative director of EU Citizens for an Independent Scotland, is having an event at Holyrood. They were expecting it to happen in tandem with the flag coming down, but obviously the flag will still be flying now, and this wee demonstration is, again, that metaphor of leaving a light on should be a really
yeah, because I've been seeing quite a lot of wee towns having small events. I know we're having one in Alexandra.
And there's been similar things happening in Europe as well.
Which is lovely. Again, it's that symbolism. It's people coming together and just, yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah.
It'll be very, I think it'll be quite an emotional event.
Yeah, especially I think for our for the new Scots who were not able to vote on the Brexit and have now had their whole lives turned upside down.
Yes.
Speaking of which, pressure is mounting on the Tory government to accept a tailored migration system for Scotland, as Ian Blackford MP warned hostile Tory immigration policies threatened to plunge Scotland's working age population into decline. Speaking at Prime Minister's Questions, the SNP Westminster leader challenged Boris Johnson to back Scottish Government proposals for a Scottish visa, which has cross-party support in the Scottish Parliament, the backing of the Scottish Trade Unions Congress, the Federation of Small Business and the Scottish Council for Development and Industry. With 2 days until Scotland is dragged out of the EU, the Prime Minister faced a series of questions from MPs Carol Monaghan, Angela Crawley, Patrick Grady, Owen Thompson and Ronnie Cowan on the damaging impact of Tory immigration policies and the need to devolve powers to the Scottish Parliament. Commenting, Ian Blackford MP said, "Pressure is mounting on the Tory government to listen to the evidence and accept the Scottish Government's proposals for a tailored immigration system for Scotland. Hostile Tory immigration policies threaten to plunge Scotland's working age population into decline, cause serious staffing shortages in key industries, and inflict lasting damage to our public services, finances and economy, leaving Scotland poorer and worse off. The Scottish Parliament has backed a differentiated solution for Scotland, and the Scottish Government plans are backed by the expert organisations including the STUC, the Federation of Small Business and the Scottish Council for Development and Industry. The Tory Government must stop ignoring Scotland and devolve the powers we need for our population and economy." Now, Boris Johnson immediately responded to this and said it was an absolutely fanciful and deranged idea, which seems like a somewhat extreme response.
Seems like a normal Boris response, doesn't it? Honestly, do we expect anything less or more from this man?
I mean, this of course is something that Canada manages perfectly easily. Quebec has a different immigration system than the rest of Canada. The Swiss cantons all have different rules about how you can choose to move in there. What is it? Do you think this is just Boris Johnson flexing his British nationalist muscles?
I think it is. I don't think he's got any regard to the economic growth of Scotland. I think it's just him basically, I'm the Prime Minister. What I do is what I say is what you do. And I think this is all, it's not about looking at any economic growth at all. He's not interested in, how it's going to affect Scotland. He's made that quite clear. He's not interested in any economic growth in Scotland at all. So, yeah, I think it's just him being Boris. Being Boris and just kind of giving it. No, I said no. I think it would be different if he came up with the idea. I get the impression he's one of these men that if he comes up with the idea, it's wonderful.
Fine, yeah.
But if somebody else comes up with the idea,
it has to be.
No.
slap down,
Yes.
as the Daily Mail would put it. Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit on the show last night to Day Tucker about how this is going to affect agricultural workers. There's a great need for agricultural workers all over the country, and very often they're people who come from the rest of the EU. But that's going to be much more difficult now. What other fields do you think are a particular concern?
You've got the construction industry right away, because you've got people that come from Europe working in the construction industry. You've also got the care industry as well. That's going to be affected. The NHS, that's going to be affected as well. I think it's going to be right across the board, right across the economic board in Scotland. I dread to think what's going to happen if we're not allowed to do this, because the tourism industry, that's another big one as well. I mean, I know I've got family members that work in the tourism industry who come from Europe and things like that, and they don't know what's going to be happening with them. It's quite scary. It's quite scary.
And I mean, this all ties into the independence debate as well, because part of the reason that Scotland's working age population is not where it should be is because we have this brain drain to London, which is something that independence might not stop, but would help to slow down at least. It
would help to slow down, yeah.
While also giving us the option to manage our own immigration. Is there anything more, do you think, that we could do, or that Scotland, the Scottish Government could do to get... You kind of saw the question coming there, didn't you, Sam?
I better not answer that one. I don't know. Legal routes, litigation, I don't know. It's going to be a long, hard fight. Independence is the obvious one, you know. We need to do that. It's Boris Johnson. It's the Westminster government. It's you know.
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
going to be
the independence
we're
movement.
fighting a battle. We are fighting a kind of political battle here when it comes to this, an economic battle.
The independence movement often gets kind of accused of claiming that, oh, well, independence is going to solve everything. But increasingly, I'm finding that when we go through some of these stories, it's actually, independence is probably the only thing that's going to fix this.
Because I remember years ago, you know, when they started talking, the independence became more of a reality, you'd be like, and you would start asking all these questions. You'd be like, what about this? What about that? Don't know. And some of the things were a bit, not sure, but we could do this and do that. But as you say, as it becomes, the independence movement becomes stronger and stronger, more confident. You've got academics, you've got, you know, your professionals, and you know, we're now getting more answers to all those questions, and to have complete control of our own economy would give us so much power within itself, with regards to a lot of things. Yeah.
On that note, on more difficulties created at Westminster, the campaigning SNP MP Chris Stevens has slammed the Tory government for clawing back £50 million in universal credit loan repayments from some of the poorest people in the UK in just 1 month, saying it's a clear sign of a flawed policy. In a response to a written question submitted to the DWP by Mr Stevens, the appalling cost of the Tories' 5-week wait for universal credit was laid bare. In August 2019, the latest period for which figures are available, the DWP deducted £50 million from universal credit claimants to pay back loans they had to take to cover basic living costs for the 5 weeks they have to wait before their first universal credit payment. The DWP's own figures show that in addition to the £50 million, a further £44 million is being deducted to repay previous overpayments, errors, arrears or fines, leaving all too many claimants on the brink of destitution. Food banks report that the deduction of such eye-watering sums from universal credit payments is behind a growing number of referrals for food parcels. Commenting, Chris Stevens, the MP for Glasgow South West, said, "This is an incredible sum. The figures lay bare that the 5-week policy simply isn't working. It just drives people further into poverty." The DWP is removing £50 million from people each month to pay for its own ridiculous policy of making them wait weeks and weeks for universal credit payments. Unless the DWP moves to a policy where benefits are paid promptly, the queues for food banks in Glasgow and across the country will continue growing. In Scotland, we're taking a different approach in building a social security system based on fairness, dignity and respect. It's about time the Tories followed suit. And this is something that, it's a genuinely inexplicable policy as far as I can tell, unless the goal is to drive people into poverty. 5 weeks is going to take you past, if you lose your job and you have to wait 5 weeks, that is inevitably going to take you past your last paycheck. There's almost no way to avoid it taking you past your last paycheck before you get anything you're entitled to. For many people, for casual workers, people who get paid weekly, whatever, it's an even worse situation. Do you have any idea why the Tories insist on this?
Sociopath comes to mind, if I can say that in the nicest possible way. I just don't get why any government would put a system like this in place to effectively harm the most vulnerable in our society. Mm-hmm. I don't get it. When people are on benefits, they're on benefits for a reason. Mm-hmm. It's not through choice. They've maybe lost jobs, or they have took an illness, mm-hmm. or they're caring for someone who's mm-hmm. got an illness. These people should be nurtured, looked after, given opportunities, where opportunities can be given opportunities to get people back into work and things, not punished. This is punishment. Mm-hmm. This is a form of, it's like modern day punishment. That's what it is. Yeah,
the people in the poorhouse.
Yeah, it's pretty much. When I see it quite a lot down my way, especially when universal credit got rolled out down my way. It's horrendous because it's putting people into debt. Mm-hmm. And it's deliberately designed to put people into debt. There is no way of sugarcoating it. It is designed to deliberately put people into poverty. Because one, they've got to take a loan, which they've mm-hmm. got to pay back for. But that loan may only cover certain costs. Mm-hmm. So they've then got to go to food banks. They've got to ask family, friends. Some people might end up going to payday loans mm-hmm. and things like that. So this kind of mountain of poverty gets worse. Mm-hmm. And then by the time they get their first payment, that money's gone.
Yeah.
So they've got to re-borrow again. Yeah. So it's deliberately, people who may not have been in debt before mm-hmm. are going into debt. One of the things that I noticed when universal credit started getting rolled out in Scotland was, because I worked in the farmers' markets and the markets and travelled around, we noticed that the average spend, people come to the farmers' market and spending, and talking to other retailers and that, they've said the same, it actually goes down. So mm-hmm. it's affecting the economy mm-hmm. because people have got less money to spend because they're always paying back this debt. Mm-hmm. And the thing is when people lose their job, they're not always guaranteed their final wage packet.
No, that's true.
You know, there is businesses and companies out there who won't pay that final wage packet for whatever reasons. There's lots of different reasons. So I just think it's despicable. It's just such a nasty, nasty system. Mm-hmm. There is no compassion in it. There is no there is no care. There is no nothing. It's designed to keep people in poverty, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things that it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
The government says that that's what the government has decided you need to live on, but they'll take some off to cover a crisis loan that they gave mm-hmm. you. So they accept that you need the crisis loan in order to get through the 5-week period, but then they take some of that back off you. This is exactly what Chris Stevens is talking about. They take some of that out of the 70 quid that which is barely enough to survive on, which, as you say, just stops you ever being able to keep your head above water.
It puts you in that position of just constant debt. It's easy to get into debt. Getting out of debt is a bit harder. And so if they're taking so much money out of your money, whether it's weekly, monthly, or fortnightly, depending on how people get paid, they've recognised you need that money.
Yeah.
But they're saying...
But they're still saying they have to take some
back.
back.
They have to take it back.
Yeah.
But however, people are then having to borrow money off of other people to make ends meet. And that's wrong.
Yeah.
Nobody should be in that position. And it's like a modern day punishment of... it's just horrible. It's a horrible, horrible system.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I'm sure Chris Stevens and others will continue to fight on. It's been a long, difficult fight for politicians and for anti-poverty groups, but one that we do fundamentally support. Going outside the UK now, Donald Trump's proposed two-state solution to achieve peace between Israel and Palestine has been criticised by almost all parties close to the situation. Governments in the UK and France have given a diplomatic response, saying that they will study the plan closely, but briefings suggest that many view the plan as completely unworkable. Several EU countries are said to be concerned that the plan effectively extends Israeli sovereignty over the whole West Bank, legitimising the Israeli settlements that have been the flashpoint for much of the tension in the region. A joint statement from Western NGOs, including CAFOD, Christian Aid and War on Want, gave this warning. There is a major risk that the so-called peace plan, set to be released imminently, will lead to the formal annexation of Palestinian land, perpetual Israeli occupation, and the negation of Palestinians' collective right to self-determination. Such an outcome will only deepen poverty and polarisation. The UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, gave a terse statement emphasising that Trump's plan did not meet the UN's clearly defined understanding of what a two-state solution might look like, while Trump's regional ally, the Turkish President Recep Erdogan, described the plan as absolutely unacceptable and said it legitimised the Israeli occupation and warned that the plan will not serve peace or bring about a solution. Given that Donald Trump has already taken a number of provocative measures like moving the US Embassy to Jerusalem, which was considered a direct insult to the Palestinian people, is this any kind of surprise?
No, it's not. It's, I'm going to say, it's Donald Trump. It's like Boris Johnson. Are we surprised? It's as if they like to go out the way to annoy people. They like to go out their way to infuriate people. They've got their own agendas. Donald Trump has obviously got his own agenda. He is going to just... it's going to escalate. It's going to end up... I think if Donald Trump gets his own way, he's going to just keep escalating it because he's not doing anything to actually solve the problem with Palestine. He just seems to be adding flames to the fire.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's Donald Trump, isn't it?
Well, I mean, he does have fairly significant support from the Jewish lobby in the US. I saw one speaker introducing him at a rally, I think, saying that it was the duty of all good Jews to support him. Of course, this plan had been criticised widely in Israel as well, on both the left and the right. People have said this isn't going to work. It's not what we want. It doesn't suit anyone very well. And this is including, Israeli nationalists arguing against this plan. It does seem very much as though Trump just doesn't really know what he's doing in a lot of situations.
Well, he really doesn't, does he? I think he's proved that quite a lot. Listen to me sitting here acting like an expert, not. But he really doesn't. And the thing is with these kind of people like Trump or Boris Johnson, they pretend they know and they won't admit when they're wrong, which makes them dangerous. And with Trump, you see things that he spills on Twitter, on social media and speeches and things. He just doesn't know what he's doing half the time. And that can be dangerous. That is very dangerous because there's people that do follow him and do believe what he says. So he doesn't seem to take the fact that he has a responsibility. The thing is we world leaders who have a responsibility, and he does not seem to take that responsibility serious. I think he thinks he's on a TV show.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of went to his head.
Speaking of the drama that just continually surrounds the American president, Trump today unleashed his sharpest attack yet on John Bolton after the former national security advisor depicted Trump as playing a central role in a politically motivated pressure campaign on Ukraine, as the US Senate prepared today to enter a new phase in the president's impeachment trial. Senators will begin the first of 2 planned days of posing questions to both Trump's legal team and the Democrats in the House of Representatives group who have served as prosecutors in the trial on charges of abusing power and obstructing Congress arising from his request that Ukraine investigate his political rival Joe Biden. The questioning, which was set to begin about an hour ago, precedes a vote later in the week on whether to call witnesses, including Bolton, as Democrats have sought. Senate Republicans so far have refused to allow any witnesses or new evidence in the trial, with Republican leaders hoping to vote as quickly as possible to acquit Trump and leave him in office. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell told senators yesterday that he did not have the votes to block Democrats from calling witnesses because some Republicans remained uncommitted. Democrats need 4 Republican senators to join them in voting for witnesses in order to get a majority in the 100-seat Senate. The Senate is expected to acquit Trump, but allowing witnesses such as Bolton could inflict political damage on the president as he seeks re-election on November 3rd. So, Sam, I don't know if you've been following this trial. I mean, it is a fairly ridiculous situation to have a trial where no witnesses can be heard and no new evidence can be brought in. What's your take on that?
You know, I'm going to say
you're finding it very hard to take Donald Trump seriously, aren't you?
I do. Yeah, again, it's just a theatre show, isn't it? Because it's not really a trial, because if they're not allowed evidence or witnesses and they're not allowed to, how can you have a serious trial without evidence and witnesses?
Yeah.
It's a bit bizarre.
Yeah.
And Trump, again, you know, he has a responsibility as being a world leader, and all he does is lashes out. You know, he's always lashing out. That's not the type of world leader or the way people expect a world leader to behave. You expect them to be composed, level-headed, honest, all these wonderful attributes, and be able to talk. He acts like, I'm going to say, teenager, toddler, not getting his own way, and lashes out. And sometimes, I mean, when Trump's first hit the political spectrum and he was on Twitter, it was a bit of a laugh. It was a bit funny seeing these things. But now, no, it's a bit tiresome now. It's about time he kind of actually started acting like the President of the United States instead of a toddler or a teenager not getting their own way. And that's what seems to be happening. Maybe I'm just too much mum here. You know, I just see them and I go, my kid's done that. Honestly, they'd be grounded and sent to their room if they behaved like that and spoke like that in public and social media. So, no, I find it quite hard to take them serious. I really do. And I think the trial is, I've said it from day one on here, I think it's a bit of a theatre production. I really do.
Mitt Romney did speak yesterday. Mitt Romney is one of the few Republican senators who's shown any serious interest in actually holding a meaningful trial. And he said that he and a few of his colleagues might be willing to allow witnesses, might be willing to vote with the Democrats to allow witnesses. There was a little bit of talk about an exchange of witnesses, if you like, where Bolton would be able to testify if Joe Biden was also called to testify.
They need to come to some sort of agreement in order for the trial to have any legitimacy and to hold any kind of standing in the public. They need to be able to present evidence and witnesses, so they need to have something they need to be able to put forward. And I think they've got no choice in the matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some Republicans who really ought to look at it as you say, even if they expect to acquit the president, they should be doing their best to make it look like a fair trial, because otherwise the division becomes.
Yeah. And how does that stand? And I don't know much about the kind of American legal system and things, but how would that have a standing in their legal process?
I mean, ultimately they can vote any way they want, but I think it would lower the esteem of Congress in people's eyes. It would make it
especially down the line, future generations.
Yeah.
It's not what I think. What these people don't realise, it's not what happens here and now. It's how it affects future generations. And when you're talking about leaders, that's what they've got to be looking ahead to future generations, not here and now for their own agenda. It's got to be how it's going to affect. And I think, Trump's all about here and now.
Yeah. Well, in China, China has been urged to allow UK residents with Chinese passports to be allowed to join repatriation efforts as the Wuhan coronavirus outbreak continues to cause grave concern in the area and around the world. The UK plans to evacuate as many UK citizens as possible, beginning immediately. British Airways has already suspended all flights to and from China, and many other airlines have followed suit. For British citizens still in the area, special evacuation flights are the only option for leaving the region. Returnees are expected to be held in quarantine for at least 2 weeks on return to the UK, probably at a military airbase, according to Public Health England and the Department of Health. However, several UK residents are currently expected to remain trapped in China, as Chinese passport holders will not be allowed to leave on British repatriation flights. This includes Cindy Siddle, a Chinese national who travelled from her home in Northumberland with her husband and 9-year-old daughter to celebrate New Year with her family. Cindy has had right to remain in the UK for more than a decade, but due to strict Chinese restrictions on dual nationality, the British government now finds itself unable to help her. In another case, Natalie Francis, a teacher from York, has been told she will have to leave her 3-year-old son in China, as he has a Chinese passport, but she doesn't. And this, again, this crisis has been growing and growing over the last couple of weeks. We are now seeing several countries, Japan, France, the UK, amongst others, all working very hard to get their citizens out of China. But this issue of people who are technically still Chinese citizens are not going to be allowed to leave. What should the Chinese government be doing?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't think there's an easy answer to this. I think it's a difficult one. When do you turn? I mean, the thing is these people have been living here. Mm-hmm. They've got their lives here. They should be able to, but when they are still, I don't know. It's such a hard one. Mm-hmm. I would like to think that the Chinese government would go, you can go back to the UK, but I don't know. I honestly can't answer that. It's just such a difficult situation. Yeah,
I mean, clearly the Chinese government wants to do everything it can to prevent the outbreak spreading.
They're wanting to contain it, and they're not wanting it to spread because it's highly contagious and whatever. It's such. I don't think there's a right or wrong to that one. I think that's one of these conundrums that there's not really a right or wrong. You know, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Yeah. Because, is it the incubation period's 2 weeks?
About 2 weeks, yeah.
So there's always that possibility if they don't know, if there's not a test or anything they can do to see if you're carrying the virus beforehand. Mm-hmm. It's such a hard situation to be in. I think it's a heartbreaking situation.
Yeah, it's certainly heartbreaking, and we do hope that whatever happens, that those families, whether they're able to stay in China under quarantine, or if China is able to change the rules to allow them to leave,
Even if they're allowed to leave after the 2-week quarantine, even if they can put them in quarantine.
Put quarantine in China and then
allow
take them
them
out.
to come back.
That might be a solution. We will keep an eye on this as this crisis just continues to rumble on. It seems like the Chinese government is having real difficulties in containing it. But as you say, there's a lot of very difficult decisions to be made. Back in Scotland, though, and I know, Sam, you love your statistical stories.
Thank you.
So Scotland's economy grew by 0.3% during the third quarter of 2019, according to statistics announced today by the Chief Statistician. Growth in the latest quarter has not been revised from the first estimate published last month. During the third quarter, the updated figures show that output in the services sector grew by 0.1%, output in the production sector grew by 1.1%, and output in the construction sector remained flat compared to quarter two. When compared to the third quarter of 2018, growth over the year is now estimated at 0.6%, which is revised down from the first estimate of 0.7%. So, we've seen a wee bit of growth in the Scottish economy. Is this good news, bad news, indifferent news?
It's good. Growth is always good, isn't it? Yeah, it's always good, but yeah, statistics, what can I say? Somebody's got to do the job.
Yeah, I mean, 0.3% is not a lot of growth for the growth over the year of 0.6%. Is still very low. We are in a very sluggish economy just now, and a lot of this, again, is related to Brexit.
Yeah, because it's all about people's confidence, and they don't know what's happening, and how many times in the last year we're given that definite date of leaving, and nobody could prepare because nobody knew what was happening. So yeah, that will have. I mean, growth is always good. It's not a bad thing. It's always good, but.
Yes.
It's statistics.
I know how much you love them. In more statistics news, Scotland's international exports increased by 3.4% in 2018. Exports to the rest of the UK also increased, up by 2.5%. Scotland's chief statistician today released Export Statistics Scotland 2018, which provides estimates of the cash value of Scotland's exports of goods and services by industry and destination for 2018. These show that in 2018, Scotland's international exports, excluding oil and gas, increased by £1.1 billion to £33.8 billion. This was helped by strong performance in exports of food and beverages, up £420 million, which is 7.1%, underpinned especially by strong whisky exports. The manufacture of food and beverages continues to be the largest industry for international exports in Scotland. Exports to EU countries grew by 4.5% to £16.1 billion in 2018. International exports to non-EU countries grew slightly more slowly, increasing by 2.5% to £17.7 billion. And Scottish exports to the rest of the UK, again excluding oil and gas, was also increased in 2018, up 2.5% to £51.2 billion. And that was driven by strong performances in exports of financial and insurance activities and utilities. So again, Scotland selling well around the world. We see there especially whisky performing well, and our food and drink sector performing very well as well. Is this a shock to you? Are you surprised that Scotland?
Oh well, now according to the
well?
Unionists, we don't export anything. No, it's not. One of the things about Scotland, especially with our food and drink industries, we excel in quality. Especially the artisan products. So no, I am not surprised, because we have some brilliant food and drinks companies, especially small artisan ones out there, who produce some of the most amazing alcohol, soft drinks, and foods. But yeah, so no, I'm not surprised, and it's good to see that it's doing so well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of this will be challenged by Brexit.
Of course, yeah.
But this idea of Scotland as a major exporter, especially of food and drink, this is something that we need to talk up a bit more, isn't it?
We do. We need to celebrate it a lot more, because we have got some amazing artisan producers out there. And we need to celebrate about it. We need to talk about it. We need to shout about it. I mean, our whisky industry is second to none. I know down Maui there's lots of wee mini microbreweries. There's wee bakers and all sorts of food producers down Maui, or up Maui, because we're up Loch Lomond. You know, and there's loads. And when you travel around Scotland, you're always seeing these wee kind of niche businesses. And when you speak to them, I have the pleasure, because I used to work in the farmers markets, I have the pleasure of actually meeting some of these producers. And even over the years, you hear about them exporting abroad, or down to England or other parts of the UK. And they are so proud and so passionate about what they do. And I think we do need to offer them more support. As the general public, we need to offer them more support. And shout about it and give them more support.
Yeah, we've talked many times on the show, of course, about Save Scotland, the brand. We've had Ruth on from that organisation several times, and that's one of the real challenges that I think we have to watch out for as we leave the EU. And one of the major reasons I think why Scotland needs to stay in the EU, to retain that protection for things like Scotch whisky.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The last thing I think anyone in Scotland wants is for Americans to be given the ability to produce Scotch in some trade deal that Boris Johnson manages to cook up with Trump. Do you think there's any hope of the British government kind of making sure that we do protect things like Scotch whisky and Arbroath Smokies? And
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so. I think it's all up for sale. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I think if they get their own way and they can make a quick buck out of us, pardon the pun, I think they will. I don't think we will. I think what you're seeing happening is the Scotland, the brand, is getting. They're trying to force that out and go more for we're seeing the Union Jack on Scottish products. That whereas before, even our farmers, you would go to the supermarket and you would see Scotch beef and things like that. Now it'll say Scotch beef, but you'll have the Union Jack on it and things like that. So that never, it was always the St Andrews flag, the Saltire was on it. But now it's becoming more and more apparent. It's getting harder and harder to be able to identify and say, right, because before you could just look at it and go, Scotland, right, fine, I'm supporting my own local farmers and producers. It's getting really difficult now. I've even seen products that will say that Scotch whatever, and they're Scottish, and then when you look at the country of origin or the produce, they're actually getting shipped in.
And then it's being
repackaged
packaged in Scotland, so it still counts as
So
Scottish.
you've got to be careful, there is that as well. So you need to be aware of your labels and how they work. Unfortunately, if you're going to be that pedantic about it, it's a full-time job, especially if you go to supermarkets. If you're lucky enough to live in an area where you know your local butcher and you know your local fishmonger and things, then it's a lot easier. Not every town has got that, because a lot of these have been done away with because of supermarkets. So but I think we need to be very wary that we could be losing our identity and but the thing is, Scotland-based products does scream quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's always screamed quality.
And that's something that we do have to hold on to. We would encourage you at home, if you're able to, look up Keep Scotland, the brand, online and offer them your support. It's something that really matters to the Scottish economy and to just, as you say, Scotland's reputation as a quality producer. Our final story tonight, the First Minister has welcomed progress to deliver recommendations from the National Advisory Council on Women and Girls to tackle gender inequality. The Advisory Council was established to champion gender equality and suggest where more action is needed to tackle persistent inequality, to support women in work, end violence against women and girls, and to challenge gender stereotypes. All key recommendations in the 2019 report by the Advisory Council have been accepted by the Scottish Government. Since the group's Year 1 report was published in January last year, a bill on forensic medical services has been introduced to Scottish Parliament to ensure that victims can access healthcare and forensic medical examination without first reporting to the police. A national task force on human rights leadership has been created and will explore the incorporation of the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women into Scots law. A new commission to advance equality in education has been established and will meet for the first time next month. Speaking at a National Advisory Council on Women and Girls event in Edinburgh, the First Minister said, "As First Minister, I want to ensure that Scotland leads the way, that the generations of women and girls that come after me grow up with equal opportunities in a truly equal society. I've observed a growing appetite from across the Scottish Government and the wider public and private sectors to ensure that equality is fully considered and reflected in our respective policies. I believe that the bold, ambitious and thought-provoking recommendations of the National Advisory Council on Women and Girls will help us to do that." And I think we have to welcome this news. As a woman,
Thank you.
I noticed. I have to ask you, what's kind of leaping out at you about this?
I think it's a good thing. Thing is, we are getting there, but there's so much more we can do. As a woman, you still come up against discrimination quite a lot, especially with the Save the Loch Lomond campaign, which is kind of spearheaded by two women.
Mm-hmm.
And when we first started, it was very much a case of, oh, you're just two wee women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we're two independently strong women. And yes, we do have a team behind us. They were all, it was, all right, where's the men?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got them, but we do all the kind of, legwork and the hard work. They done the hard work as well, crikey. Yeah, they did as well. They do as well. They do, honest. But no, you're always up against that. And even as a female, I'm a single parent mum, and I'm self-employed. So right away, I get it. Being a single parent mum, right away, it's that discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
There's always that air of judgment about you.
And then you go, but I run my own business. I'm self-employed. Oh, really? How do you manage that? I don't know.
Yeah.
I just do. And I think we need to. It's getting better, but there's so much more we can do, because even when I come across young ladies and girls, there's still a certain amount of, well, I'm a girl, I can't do that. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can. Who told you you can't? Yes, you can. Mm-hmm. The only person that's going to stop you is you. You can do that. And that all starts from when they're wee, the way how we speak to our children. One of the things that I've got 3 boys, so I'm very aware. I've got 3 sons, and they've got the role to play in this as well. Men do have a very important role to play in this as well. Women have got to be able to stand up and say, I'm equal, but men have got to be able to accept
that,
and encourage that and support it. And I'm very much, my sons are brought up to be very supportive, and one of the things is I was always very wary of with having sons. I remember being a girl, and you'd be playing around the playground, and I was always playing with the boys. I was a tomboy. I was always, and if a boy hurt you or whatever, it was, oh, he likes you.
Aye.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas with my boys, I've always like, you don't do that. If you like a girl, you tell her. Mm-hmm. You do not make physical contact with violence. Yeah. And I think it's being able, that starts from a young age. Yeah. And you've got to just keep, it's like any form of educating your children. Yeah. You just keep repeating it, and you just keep teaching them. Mm-hmm. And you're hoping that by the time they're adults, they have made those conscious decisions and choices of what type of adult they want to be. And I think that's how we're going to, I believe that's how we change the way discrimination works in all levels, whether it's gender, race, sexuality, it doesn't matter. You've got to get it from, educate from we and upwards and give people the information. But it is getting better, but no, I still do come across it as quite funny, especially when people think, just assume that you're a wee woman, you know, and it's like...
You can't really know anything.
Yeah, you don't really... I don't know anything.
Yeah.
But, you know,
I think quite honestly, Sam, anybody who meets you and thinks that you're going to be a pushover just because you're a woman is about to get a very rude awakening.
They do, it's quite funny. It is quite funny.
But that is all we've got time for tonight. I will say, if you're willing and able to get involved here at Broadcasting Scotland, we are an absolutely equal opportunities employer. We are always looking for new people to help us out as journalists, as technical staff, camera people, doing all sorts of things. Presenters as well. We would love to have more female presenters on the show. That's been a wee bit difficult recently. So if you want to get involved, if you're able to get involved, do just reach out to us. You can get us on Twitter. You can email us. The email address is on the website. You can get in contact any way you can and come in and join us. If you're not able to support us in that way, do please go to broadcastingscotland.scot/register. The address is on the bottom of the screen. Go to that address, sign up as a supporter. Your £5 a month will make a huge difference to the quality and the quantity of programmes that we can produce, and as well to the opportunities that we can offer to women and men to get involved here in producing the media. If you're not able to support us financially, then don't worry, the shows will always remain free to view online. But you can help us out by sharing them around, share them on Twitter, Facebook, just email them to your friends, let your friends know that you watch Broadcasting Scotland, that you get something out of it, and hopefully you can encourage them to become part of the Broadcasting Scotland family. We've been talking today about a referendum potentially happening this year. And we're going to need strong independent media in Scotland if we want to have the kind of coverage of that process that we never got in 2014 from the rest of the media. So if you are able to support us in any of these ways, please do. If not, otherwise, as I say, just thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 with Gordon, and we'll also have a special show tomorrow night. A couple of interviews that I carried out today. With Hassan Hassanovic and Janine Weber, two survivors of genocide. We wanted to talk to them. It's Holocaust Remembrance this week, and we wanted to have a word with them. It's really moving interviews, some of the most difficult ones I've done on the show so far. So do please tune in for that tomorrow night. But until then, thanks very much to Sam for joining us. Thank you for joining us as well. We'll see you all again soon. Good night.